Welcome to the podcast where three longtime friends talk about video games from the average gamer's perspective. My name is Andrew Kimball.
I'm Dylan Wren.
And I'm Aubrey Summer.
And
we are your friendly neighborhood gamers.
Hello and welcome back to the neighborhood. Today we are trading in our hidden blades for, well, more hidden blades because we're journeying to feudal Japan with Assassin's Creed Shadows. We'll be sharing our first impressions of this stunning new setting, exploring the dual protagonists, the agile Naoi and the powerful Yasuke, and breaking down all the new gameplay mechanics. So get ready to explore a world of stealth, samurai, and shadows as we unpack everything Assassin's Creed Shadows has to offer. Before we really get too far into it, if you're on the video version, you probably noticed that Dylan has been replaced with somebody else. If you're only listening to the audio version, the Wait For It collabs continue. Phil is back with me to talk about this game. Dylan has not played it, but Phil has. So Phil, how's it going?
It's going well. Glad to be back. We'll get tired of each other probably pretty soon. So we should probably not do anything like this for a while.
Yeah, this is it. This is no more.
Yeah, but no, excited to talk about the game and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a lot to talk about here, so we don't really need to spend a lot of time on small talk. People probably know who you are by now. Spoiler warning for this episode. Phil, you have put in some additional hours over the last week or so, but you haven't rolled credits yet, have you?
Correct. Yeah, not yet. And I don't even think I'm even remotely close. I think my characters are level 20, which I feel good about. And yeah, 26 hours is what I ended at before today. Okay.
I have rolled credits, which I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit in a spoilery way. I'm at 46-ish hours, I think it took me to get there, and I hit a point where I started mainlining things towards the end to get to the credits. But all that being said, we're not going to intentionally spoil anything story related in this game. Phil hasn't even finished it, so we don't want to spoil it for him, but also for you, the listener. So we may talk about some things that you could argue spoil things for you. So if you're really sensitive to spoilers, maybe come back and check this episode out after you've played the game. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about, how this game lands in the series, the setting, the protagonists, the visuals, the weather system, like all that kind of stuff we're going to dive into for sure. And we'll touch on the story and like how it's presented and things like that, but not spoil any key moments. With that being said, Phil, we did an episode on your show kind of talking about the Assassin's Creed series as a whole. I think these two episodes are going to come out within a week or so of each other, couple weeks.
Something like that, yeah.
You'll be able to check both those out and kind of get an idea. But kind of briefly, like, what were your expectations going into Shadows? Like, where were you with the series, with the franchise, and where were you at going into this game?
Yeah, if you remember, I jumped on this hype train pretty late into the game, like probably a month or so before its release. And then I started reaching out to you and then another friend of mine who I know has played all of the Assassin's Creed RPGs. And I was like, at the time, remember, this is before this crazy run in April and May of games that are coming out. I was like, I'm looking to jump into something else, at least on my PlayStation, that's single player. I've been playing other games on my PC, but still wanting to jump on the console. And I started looking into it a little bit more and also watching some content from content creators that I trust over on YouTube as well, and saying very positive things about it, especially the people that had gotten their hands on it a little bit early. And then when I reached out to you, you're like, this is actually one of my most anticipated titles. And I was like, oh, okay. So with them finally doing Japan and the dual protagonist, which we'll talk about, like you said, that was intriguing. And all all things pointed towards a really fun experience and a good time to jump back in.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of the franchise as a whole and enjoy the RPG games to varying degrees. Origins is my favorite. So I was excited for this one, and it leading up to this game, it seemed like they were doing a lot of interesting kind of smaller changes to some of the systems and things, like, adding prone to stealth and a grappling hook and things like that. Things that individually were small but kind of amounted to making the game feel like they were actually putting some substantial tweaks and changes into the system. So I was very excited to get my hands on it, jump into it. It had been long enough. I was itching for one of those open world checklist games, and so I knew that this would be kind of the ideal one to jump into. Getting into it, do you think that the pre-release coverage kind of accurately presented what we got in the game?
I think so for the most part. There hasn't been anything that has stood out to me that I was like, well, that's not what I saw as preparing for launch. So nothing egregious. I think it helps that, it had been pushed and it had had some extra time to cook, which is we are all for now, especially with the older gamers. We totally get it. So nothing that I can really think of that stands out. Maybe just no, and that's anything that I can think of would be like really nitpicky. So nothing that really that has altered like my gameplay or anything like that.
Well, and you
What
mentioned the
about you?
delay, and I think that was a big boon for, like, in that time between when it was supposed to originally come out in like November and when it
Yeah.
actually came out. They did a pretty good job of releasing very clear like videos and stuff on, this is the stealth gameplay, this is how Yasuke plays, this is how Naoi plays, this
with
is how the game is structured. And
with not so great narration,
yeah,
but the gameplay was good.
that one video is gonna go down
Yeah.
in history as being iconic for that that VO. But I think that they took that opportunity to be like, okay, we know that there's apprehension about us as a company. We know there's
Yeah.
apprehension about this game for valid and invalid reasons. And so I think they took that, and they took the time that they had to really be clear in the messaging leading up to this game. And so, yeah, I think that the final product was pretty much exactly what I was expecting. So I think they did a good job
And,
with that.
and let's not understate Ubisoft being like, sure, we'll miss out on some of those easy holiday sales that we could get by releasing in November. So they probably had to really convince whoever is in charge that we just need some extra time. We'll get them next Christmas or something like that.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, I think this is a record-breaking Assassin's Creed title. I can't remember
Hmm.
all the accolades it's gotten. I mean, I know it got like biggest Steam, but like they had been trying to force people to their Ubisoft launcher before, so that number's a
Right.
little skewed. Like, this is the first one I think that's really launched on Steam in that way. So, but it has done well for them, which, I mean, it is like their flagship series.
Yeah. So getting that right and showing that people are still coming out in droves was a good thing.
Yep. So when you first booted up the game and you started playing it, what were your immediate thoughts on the setting, the atmosphere, stuff like that, and then like comparing it to other Assassin's Creed games that you've played? Like, did it really pull you in those opening hours? How did you feel about that, the beginning experience?
Yeah, so naturally the Ghost of Tsushima comparisons are going to be there, whether it's fair or unfair, but it's the same setting, in a similar tone, but it's really, really pretty. And because this is the first of the Assassin's Creed RPGs that I've played, even though I've seen them in passing, I think you really don't
Mm,
understand the scope of them until you load into the game and you see how vast the map is. And like we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we were talking about it before we started recording. Like I had to reprogram how I played an Assassin's Creed game because I was approaching it incorrectly, which again we'll touch on a little bit later. So yeah, in terms of introducing the characters, really love that. I loved Yasuke's introduction specifically a little bit more, but it's gorgeous. It is really really beautiful. I mean, that setting is always going to work, especially just where we are visually when it comes to video games as a medium. I think people will always love to go back to that setting. So I think certainly very aesthetically pleasing, but also a little bit overwhelmed because again, this is the first one of these bigger Assassin's Creeds I've jumped into.
Yeah, I want to talk about the setting for a minute, and we can do that here because the Ghost of Tsushima comparisons, yeah, they've been happening. They're going to keep happening, especially with Ghost of Yotai coming out the same year. But
Yeah.
I think I think of Ghost of Tsushima as being a little more stylized. They had the simplified color palette, but like very vibrant, which I mean looks amazing in its own specific way. Whereas Ubisoft is going for a more realistic look, and this was one of the areas where Ubisoft stepped it up because like the other RPGs are big as well, and they look good, they're pretty, but this game, the like skybox is probably one of the best ones I've seen since Red Dead Redemption 2. The weather system, like the thunderstorms when they roll through, are
It's
impactful.
crazy.
Yeah, like they are
Yeah.
intense. And then
Yeah.
the
The snowstorms too.
the snow,
Those are really intense. Yeah.
like the weather system, the seasons is real. It's a cool mechanic. Like it's basically aesthetic. It doesn't really add anything to the story or anything. I mean, it does kind of affect gameplay in certain ways, but like the seasons changing, all of that is really cool. The game looks gorgeous. It's the first one that isn't on like the previous generation of consoles, so it's just PS5 and Xbox Series. So they're able to push that a little bit further. And this game has the thickest, densest woods in a game that I have ever seen. Like you cannot walk through these woods. You basically just push forward and hope for the best because
hopefully you come out on the other side.
You can't see anything through all these like brushes and trees.
No.
It's crazy. It looks pretty realistic and like how an actual like the woods would probably look. Does it lend itself to the most enjoyable gameplay experience? Probably not. There's a lot of kind of janky navigation if you get off the main paths, but I think visually and like the world that they built here is really impressive. I think some of the character models and stuff, maybe not so much, but like building this world, I think it stands against, like, I think you could put this world in like those lists of best looking video games and it would hold its own. Like, I think if you started comparing characters and stuff, then it might start to fall apart, but just like the environments and the world and the weather system and like just all that.
Like being lived in.
Yeah.
Like the villages are full of life. All the different castles and settlements and forts, all of those are really very, very vibrant and have a lot going on. What's the one early on where there's like construction going on?
I know
Is that
what
in
you're talking
Osaka?
about.
Yeah, where there's like people building stuff going on and like all that small attention to detail are things that will hold up over the test of time. Like we'll see like a tweet or an Instagram video like, man, AC Shadows, the detail in this game was crazy, for like anybody that didn't play it, they'll see that video and be like, oh, okay, maybe this is worth checking out for $20 because it's on sale again.
Because it's a Ubisoft game. On the other side of like the opening hours, I think the story starts out really strong. Like I think you mentioned Yasuke, his introduction I think was really good. I was actually more his story kind of like kicks off with a bang and then kind of leaves you hanging, whereas Naoi is kind of like the gradual, like it's still pretty intense there at the beginning because like Naoi and Yasuke find themselves at the opposite side of this conflict that's happening. But Naoi's is a lot more kind of mysterious and then like grinds to a halt with flashbacks and stuff to like teach you the game and things. Like I played for probably 10 hours before I unlocked both characters, which is crazy.
Yeah, same here.
But I thought it started really strong. I thought when the title card popped, I was like, yeah, let's go. I'm into this. I think it was relatively predictable as far as like, Naoi's motivations and what happened to her and her family and stuff. I don't think that was anything like super unique. but I thought it was presented really well and very strong. And I think that's like the best that the story ever is. I don't know that, how far you've gotten, if you would agree with that, but this game does what
Yeah.
it does what Mirage did, and it does what some of the Valhalla was similar, I guess. It was more broken up by districts, but basically, like, you're trying to take out this ring of enemies, one by one, and each of
Who
them,
were all there at the
yeah, they were all there at the
all there
inciting
at the
event.
whenever whenever it happens. I was like, damn, that's
It's like,
crazy. Y'all didn't have anything else to do. You seemed like pretty important people.
yeah,
Like,
because
you
then you're
should
like chasing them down like across Japan for the rest of the game, but they were all able to be there that night. Yeah. And so like each one of them, as you hunt them down, like kind of spins off into its own little like side story and things you have to accomplish to ultimately kill them. They're somewhat like, they are level gated, like there's recommended levels to go approach these missions in, but other than that, like you can kind of just tackle them in any order and with either character. And so I think that hurts the story. I think the two protagonists hurts the story because you can kind of take there are specific missions that only one of them can be on, and I think those missions are probably like the strongest because they're focused to that character. Whereas if you can approach it with either one, then you get to the end and it's like, oh, I just caught up with you, buddy. I'm here now for the
Yeah.
cutscene, and it just kind of it
Yeah.
feels a little awkward and a little bit like immersion breaking that they constantly have to dance around the two protagonists and your ability to choose which one you want to do a certain mission with. And so ultimately I think that the story opens really well, really strong, lots of good cutscenes, lots of dialogue establishing characters and motivations, and then you kind of just forget about all of that as you do the Ubisoft checklist and you go through and you're killing these people and you're like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember why I'm mad at them, but really it's just because that was my next quest,
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but I feel like the game also just doesn't really stick the landing, and it kind of just ends abruptly. There's been rumors that the free DLC that you get if you pre-ordered the game is actually the real ending of the game. Like they sliced it off to be able to do the DLC. I don't know. That's not out yet, so we can't actually confirm that, but it did feel kind of abrupt when the credits rolled. So that's kind of a disappointment when it had such a strong opening. Like I think if they sacrifice a compelling narrative for the freedom of the open world and like mission structure that they want. So I don't know if you've played enough to probably have seen that as well, like as it gets more fragmented.
Yeah, as I've gone on, the farther we get into like the main story, the less I've really been interested in it, and it is so jarring. Like you said, when you've just been, if you've been Yasuke for a couple, or Naoi, or either one of them for a couple hours, you go into a cutscene, like, oh, here's the other one.
Yeah.
We've been traveling together the entire time. I think that is strange, and I think it really would have benefited from the like if you go into a cutscene, or if you're about to do that mission that requires you, like, why do I have to go into the menu, hold square, and then switch the character? Just let me start the mission and switch me to the character automatically. It just seems like a waste of time. Probably just hiding loading screens behind behind that. But yeah, just as I've gotten further into the story, it is starting to waver. So I'm seeing those early parts of that you're alluding to, and for me, getting like a little bit ahead of myself, even though an open world is great, it's gorgeous. I enjoy the freedom, but sometimes I just want to be told where to go. I just want to be told this is what part of the story comes up next. This is what you're going to do. This is who you're going to do it with. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know people and a lot of studios like want to give gamers more and more freedom when it comes to these stories that they are telling. But sometimes, if you have confidence in your story, then just tell me where to go. I'm along for the ride. I paid I bought the game. So just tell me what's next. That'll be okay.
Yeah, and I think like I'm good with either one. I love a good like a Souls game, for example, where it's all lore and piecing the story together. They're not feeding you a story, but the gameplay is super fun and addicting. On the other side, like playing Clair Obscur right now. That game, they have like the open area or whatever, but so far everything I've played has been pretty linear. It's like go down, do some
It'll
fights.
funnel you in. You can like explore a little bit, but it still funnels you into where you need to go.
Right. Or you think about like some of the best story games. I guess you could talk about Red Dead 2, which is open world, but like traditionally, you hear The Last of Us, you hear like God of War, you hear some of these games.
BioShock.
Yeah, and it is a more linear experience so that they can tell that story. I think where Assassin's Creed is getting in trouble is that they want both, and it's like you can't really do both effectively. So like I think they opted more for the gameplay side of things. But speaking of like being told where to go, so this game has some pretty cool settings as far as one of them being that they introduce like this expert mode for you can individually adjust like stealth and combat and stuff. So I was playing on expert for both initially, and I was like, man, combat is hard. And so I dropped the combat down to normal, and I started having a lot more fun with the game. But the expert stealth like makes the enemies be able to see you on rooftops. It makes them like a little like smarter, and just overall makes the game, the stealth, feel like have more depth. You can really cheese the stealth in Assassin's Creed, which can be fun, but it's fun to play with this new. So I played the whole game with like the expert stealth, and like I would say probably the first half of my like 46 hours was in the beginning parts of the game, because I was just like going through castles and I was taking down. I was having a lot of fun with that stealth, but I wasn't really getting very far in the game. And then the back half, I just kind of started mainlining things and playing as Yasuke a lot more just to bully my way through stuff. Yeah. But the other system that they have is like the scout mechanic, which ties into the fact that they are not giving you a waypoint, and they give you like hints of, hey, this, and they've played around with this before in some previous games, but they made it.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, they made it like the default mode in this one. Like they really want you to commit to this, where it was more optional in the other ones. And so it's like, here's 3 hints about where you need to go next. It's in this region, and it's near this thing, and it's what, and you can either just go look for it, or you can drop a scout pin on the map and like have your scout look for it, and then it'll show up on your map. The last probably 6-ish hours, like as I was trying to get to credits and stuff, and I was ready to just kind of be able to put a pin in this game and go play Clair Obscur, I turned that off, and I just turned on the give me the checkpoint mode. Yeah. They tell you in the beginning, hey, if you can turn this off, but you might lock yourself out of some achievements. It's just one. It's the very beginning achievement. Yeah, I Googled it to make sure, and it's like everybody on Reddit was just like, no, it's just that one initial like achievement you get for finding like the first objective on your own or whatever, and then after that, that's the only achievement that's like affected. So I was like, yeah, just I've used this for most of it, and it's pretty cool for like trying to like get you to just explore the world, and find things along the way. But I was at the point where I wanted to just see this thing through. And so I turned that off, and I went from point to point to point until I saw credits. So which setting are you using?
I've been using the scouts, and I hate it so much. I was like, do they do this in all of the RPGs? Because it's not my thing. Especially like the first time I really ran into an issue trying to, I think I was out of scouts, or I really hadn't figured out the scout system yet. And I had to go into a building I never would have thought of to go into. And I was like, how the hell would I have known that this person was in here? I think it was the person that teaches you how to do go to the tea ceremony. It was in a building I didn't even know I could go in. And I think I Googled it. I think I had to go to like a walkthrough and find out where that house was. So yeah, after this, I'm definitely going to turn it off. I wanted to, leading up to this, I wanted to play it the way that they intended us to play, but I will definitely be turning that off immediately, because I do want to beat the game and see it through. Because even though we talked about like some of the missteps in terms of the story, I still want to see it through and see what happens. So, but yeah, that system did not work for me. I don't know how other people felt about it, but it is not my bag.
The other element that goes along with that is that they added this. They took away your eagle, so you didn't play the other RPGs, but like
Yeah.
you would go into a camp, or you'd go to like the edge of a camp or something, and your eagle vision was a legit eagle, and it would go up
Actual
in
eagle,
the
right?
sky,
Yeah.
yeah, and it would like fly above like a drone, and that was how you could like mark targets and chests and things like that. Well, in this game, they got rid of that. Naoi is the only one that actually has the like eagle vision where she can see through walls and stuff and like see the red outlines of the enemies. But both characters, if you hold the left trigger, can kind of like, I don't remember what they call it, but you can see,
For like points of interest and
yeah,
tag people and,
you and yeah,
yeah.
you can see like little gold circles for like chests, and like the blue circles are like your
Or blue.
next quest
Mhm.
objective thing that you need to look for. But it took me a while to get that where I'd be like,
Yep.
because I really didn't, like, I forgot about the scouts and I never used them in combat. Like, I always forgot that I had the two guy, like the couple of scouts that I could actually like call on in a fight. Never,
Oh yeah.
I like rarely, maybe use them once or twice because I just didn't think about it. But it took me a while for it to click where when I get close to where I think I'm supposed to be, I need to use that like left trigger scan thing and look
Yeah.
for that blue dot. And then once I
Same.
kind of figured that out, it wasn't as bad. But yeah, definitely, I got to the point where I was like, I need to see, I just need to kind of mainline this thing. I'm tired of
Yeah.
the clue system. So it's cool in concept, but yeah, it can definitely, if you're not vibing with it, it feels like unnecessary steps to play the game. It's kind of like,
Hmm.
because it's not complicated. It's like, oh, they're in this region
No.
by this temple.
Southeast of this,
Yeah.
they're standing near this shop or something like. Look for burnt houses. That was like one of the most recent ones
Yeah. And so it's
that I
like,
did.
okay,
So
I have to kind of
yeah.
piece that
Or
together.
you can tell me where they are.
Yeah, or just give me that blue icon on the map.
Yeah. What was the other? Oh, the first thing you talked about was the stealth. So yeah, I've also been playing through on, as far as the stealth difficulty, the highest difficulty. I think that's the way to go, even though it is more difficult, because in those other games, and not Assassin's Creed isn't the only one guilty of this, but like just being able to hover above an enemy is, it's really immersion breaking. So I think that's the way to go. Combat wise, I was struggling. Like I told you before we started, I wasn't playing the game correctly and just totally ignoring levels. I was like, no, I can get through this as long as I parry and block correctly, which you already know I'm not very good at.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the frustration came early on, was just punching above my weight class. And then when I readjusted how I played in the last like 4 to 6 hours, I've had a much better time. So a lot of those frustrations were my own fault for sure. But the combat's still difficult, even on normal mode. And yeah, there was definitely a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, because they tweaked how combat works. So in Origins, they shifted to a more dodge parry focused with abilities that you could use, and they shifted to using the right bumper and trigger for your attacks, like in a Souls game. And so
Hmm.
that kind of like laid down the blueprint for this version of the combat system, and it didn't really deviate other than the special abilities you got, and then like the weapons and things that you would get because of like each setting is, you know, is different. This game, they tried, I think, Ghost of Tsushima and their like Ronin duels, I think was probably part of the inspiration, but and also I think probably just Souls games being more popular, but I think they tried to make combat more intentional. And so
Hmm.
like you have attacks that you have to parry, you have attacks that you have to dodge, and then they still give you the like the abilities. You're like filling up an adrenaline meter, and then you're using your abilities, and then they each of the two characters has their three different like melee weapons, and then Yasuke has some ranged weapons as well.
Hmm.
And so the combat definitely, it felt like a step up as someone who likes Souls games and likes more intricate combat systems. It felt like a step up, and it felt better than the previous RPGs. It still felt a little, well, as Yasuke, I guess it felt a little easy to kind of cheese, and
Yeah,
then, but that
100%.
I mean that was also part of the, like, that was intentional. Yasuke is kind of this big brute who, you know, towers above all of the most of his opponents. There's some big opponents, especially if an alarm bell goes off. But
Yeah,
Naue, like, if you get caught, you're better off running away because
just running off. Yeah,
you
yeah.
can fight, but man, you got to really chip away at some of these enemies. So,
Hmm.
what did you think of the combat system kind of coming into the RPGs for the first time at all? Like, you hadn't seen the gradual build up to this version of the
Yeah.
combat.
Yeah, like I said, I had to totally readjust how I played, especially with Nawe. It's the very last mission for one of the allies you get. It's the guy who was like gonna blow up the rice. What was his name?
Oh
Do you
yeah,
know who I'm talking about?
yeah, I
Yeah,
remember what you're talking
I had to run and then switch to Yasuke
about.
and go back to that fight. That's how bad I was getting beaten in that fight. I probably played it for like 45 minutes with, and then I finally just ran away, switched characters, and then I finally beat him. Because yeah, like you said, in those moments where you get overwhelmed, even with Yasuke can happen very easily. Like you said, there like I was trying to clear out a fort. I was confident. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm the right level now. Let me go clear out this fort. And then, like you said, one of those alarms went off, and you know how he can just like slam through doors, which is one of my favorite things. I do that a little bit too much, but I I knew there were more enemies. I couldn't find them. I was like, oh, they're behind this door, and I like broke down the door, and there was an enemy behind there that was a level too high for me, and I was like,
Mm,
oh no! So I had to, like you said, sometimes it's best to just kind of run off and reattack, or reanalyze those and go back to them a little bit later. But yeah, I've certainly, like I said, playing on normal has definitely been a challenge. But once I got a better feeling for, okay, I need to adjust how I'm playing and adjust to how they want me to play. This is not Black Flag or Assassin's Creed 2 or whatever it is. So I have to. Can acknowledge that I was the problem early on.
yeah, yeah, I totally get that. That kind of leads into one of the main core things about this game, which is the dual protagonist system. So we touched on it a little bit here, but you have two characters, Naue, Yasuke. Naue is your stealth character, Yasuke is your fighting character, and just talking about them like rational human beings. We're not going to get into any of
Yeah.
the online discourse and debates. If you want to go talk about that or listen to somebody talk about that, there's plenty of it online for you to go find.
Yeah.
Coming at it,
Someone's whining about it somewhere.
yeah, like I mean, I thought him, you know, being who he is, being a black man in this setting, I thought was a very interesting idea to explore. And
Mhm.
again, I don't know that they really did anything with that ultimately. Like there's definitely some like references and some characters that make a bigger deal about it than others, but overall it was kind of just like, I feel like they didn't capitalize on it as much as they could have, or maybe capitalize isn't the right word. They didn't like get into it as much as they could have to actually tell some sort of
Mhm.
meaningful story. But talking about them as like their archetypes in the game, I like Yasuke and I like playing as Yasuke. I like Naue and I like playing as her. I think it's cool that they both exist in this game, and I like their relationship back and forth and how it builds. I don't know if you did the like mission at the base where they like drink together. Like, I thought that was pretty
Mhm.
funny and pretty cool. Like, seeing those moments was nice. I also don't know that it would have hurt this game to just have a single protagonist that could fight a
Yeah.
little bit better. Like, I think that that game would have been just as good. Like, I don't know that this choice they made benefited this game at all. I don't think it necessarily hurt it, but I was kind of like, as I was playing, the switching started to kind of, like you mentioned, was like, it kind of started to feel a little tedious. Like, oh, I got to this character and they're like, oh, tell me when Yasuke is around. I want to talk to him. And I'm
Yeah.
like, hold
Yeah.
on, let me go find a
He's not going to
phone
talk
booth.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me switch. Yeah.
And so like those kind of things started to like get a little annoying, or there were certain like temples or like not temples, but like the little underground kind of caverns that you can explore. I can't remember like tombs, basically. And some of those would be like, oh, Yasuke should come back to this, and I'm like, okay, or like Yasuke not being able to
Yeah.
to climb some of these towers, and he'd just
Yeah,
be
or
like,
some of the knowledge points being specific to a character as
yeah.
well.
And so I was like, these feel like kind of weird concessions to have this dual protagonist system. Like, what if they wouldn't have been able to tell? It would have had to have been a different story. I mean, because they were trying to tell like two sides of the story in the beginning, and then they kind of come together. So like that's kind of an interesting concept, but again, we've talked about how the story isn't really anything special anyways. And so I don't know that it would have been worse to just play as like Naoi, for example, but make her hit harder. Like not
Yeah.
as strong as they made Yasuke, because that'd be unrealistic and kind of goofy, but at least like for her character, she could do some things to like do a little more damage or whatever. So I mean, like that was kind of where I fell on the dual protagonist system. Like I feel like I could have taken it or left it. Like I didn't think it didn't blow me away. That's for sure. So like, how did you
I
feel
agree.
about it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So when you look at kind of the recent examples, we have, GTA 5 and the
Recent.
Spider-Man games. Recent, that's so true. Oh my God, 2013. God, it's over 12 years old. Holy crap. Anyway, Spider-Man. We'll go Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 2 is
Spider-Man is like
a better
our
recent.
more
Yeah.
recent. Spider-Man 3 on the PlayStation 2 to go to a more. But yeah, so I agree. I would have been totally okay with the way that I could think of it is, say, if maybe Yasuke is still around somehow, but maybe he's the one that's like training Nawe, maybe in that way, so she gets a little bit stronger. I don't know. Again, it's not like people complaining about the historical accuracy of an Assassin's Creed game is always insane to me, but
Yeah.
they could have taken liberties. They always take liberties. They could have done it that way, and then maybe have a string of missions later where you are just Yasuke, as opposed to being able to switch between the two of them at all times. I don't know, but going back and forth between them, and I don't, and you can tell me, you don't have, obviously without any spoilers, but the point where the moment you're talking about where they are having like a drink and they're having a good time and getting to know each other, I did like that, but there's just so little in between that really builds that relationship, other than, okay, we're aligned now in what our goals are, and then you go off and do some stuff, and then you do that mission. So it's like I would have liked to see that build up a little bit more, because it kind of just happens out of nowhere if you choose to just kind of jump into that mission right away, or that side story. So yeah, I would have been totally okay with them fully committing to one or the other, because it's fine. I guess that's really, I think that's probably the worst case scenario, is like people are, I don't know if people are really hot or cold on it. It's just like, yeah, okay, there's two characters and that's fine, I guess. How do they, the other Assassin's Creed games, they're the other ones that have like multiple characters, is it one character but just male or female, or they're like related, right? And some of them, one is like a brother and a sister, or how does it work in the other ones?
So this is the first time we've had this kind of system since Syndicate. Syndicate was similar, where
Oh, okay,
Evie
the brother
and
and
Jacob
sister.
are brother and sister, and you could switch
Okay.
between them in the like pause menu, like a very similar system. Another game with a very forgettable story, and but there were certain that game had a much more, I don't know, like classic video game kind of loop to it, where there were dedicated mission, like open world explores either of them, do whatever. Then if you were going in to like kind of take down a warehouse and like, I think you probably could do that as either character, but it like basically, if you're going to do something combat focused, it made sense to do it as Jacob. Stealth was Evie, but then like story
Okay.
missions, it would pick the character for you like based on that
Hmm.
mission. So it was like a little bit more guided, I guess, structured than this. And also, the two of them were like constantly in cutscenes together and bantering and like they felt like they were both in the story all the time, versus like what we kind of talked about with Yasuke and Naoi, where it felt like one would just randomly pop up and be like, I've been here the whole time.
I think that's what it is. There's like the lack of banter
Mm-hmm.
is very evident, and this you don't get to play as multiple. Well, you do towards the end, but like in Red Dead, there are so many people at your camp, but you have individual moments with each and every single one of them. And I haven't really experienced that, and I'm almost 30 hours in with these two characters, right? Like that's what I think of first.
Yeah, the only time you really can have them in like together outside of a cutscene is if you're at the camp as like Naue or the base. Yasuke will be sitting there like, you know, sharpening a weapon or something, and then he'll give you
Mhm.
like a line or two of dialogue, and that's like it.
Yeah,
And as
yeah, they
this,
feel disjointed from each other, but they're supposed to be connected.
yeah, yeah, and as the story goes on, and things get a little bit more Assassin's Creedy, it kind of did what Valhalla did, where it's like, oh crap, the last 5 hours of the story, we need to loop this back to the
It's
to the
tighten things up a
Assassins
little
and
bit.
Templars. For all of that's happening, both of the characters are like, I have this thing I need to do alone, and it splits you off into these two dedicated, like a Naue mission and a Yasuke mission, which are pretty
Mhm.
strong and like finally kind of address like Yasuke's history, and the other one, you know, is Naue's history, and like basically tying in the Assassins and the Templars. Like they're kind of teased throughout the story a little bit, but this is like where you find like answers are given, and both of those are like separate. And then I did Yasuke's first, then I did Naue's, and after I finished Naue's, credits roll. There was no them coming back
They didn't like
together
get together.
discussing
Yeah.
what they had discovered, and that, you know, that's why there's been the kind of rumors and stuff about the upcoming DLC being an actual, like the actual end of the game,
Mhm.
like giving a more true kind of closure to the story. Because yeah, it felt like when the credits
Jeez.
rolled, I was like, oh, it's happening now. Which of course, once I like held B to skip or whatever, I ended up right back in the world where I just was, because I still have a ton of targets and stuff I can go
Yeah.
kill, and like there's a bunch you can do in this game. But yeah, the two, I think the structure of the game itself, like how you're going on like these smaller kind of assassination missions, and then the dual protagonists, both hurt what, like the story. They both are a disservice
Mhm.
to the story overall. And I think in, again, in like early cutscenes, and when you finally get to play as both characters, and they like meet each other for the first time, and they're interacting, and they're setting up the base and stuff for the first time, I think that was pretty strong. It was like promising a strong kind of fun, like best friend sort of relationship, but with a little bit of tension, because you know they are they were on like opposite sides
Opposite.
of this
Yeah.
conflict, and so it's like, hey, that's pretty interesting to explore that idea, but we're not going to. So
Yeah.
it just, yeah, another kind of missed opportunity where it's like you're really promoting and pushing this dual protagonist idea, but then you don't really pay it off, which, you know.
Yeah, because he had full. When we were talking about Yasuke, he had full commitment to who we think the antagonist is going to be, and they could really kind of hone in on those values. I mean, he spent obviously a lot of time with him, so you could really kind of mess around with those values and how they clash with Nawe, and they don't do that.
No.
So like maybe if you do have a mission where they're doing things together, maybe he does something that she doesn't like in terms of in combat, or a decision that he makes because he's still like in that mode of, this is how I did things when I was with this person, like things that like they could have done to kind of, like we said, progress this relationship, as opposed to the way that they have done it, at least from what I've experienced so far.
Yeah, and it got to the point like playing through the game where it felt like all of these little individual narratives were all like separate from each other, even though it's all kind of
Mhm.
technically working towards the ultimate goal for your characters, and it's also working towards, like, you know, Japan and their inner struggles and politics and things that they were dealing with at the time. It kind of just felt like, okay, just finish the one assassination, that is done and over with, moving on to the next completely separate thing, completely separate, you know. And
Took out that family. All right,
yeah,
we're good to go.
it just started to feel like disjointed and disconnected even like the further on it went, which is, and like some of the storylines within these targets I thought were pretty cool. Like there were definitely some interesting characters and directions that things go on, like that, 5 or 6 quest string within that like isolated assassination attempt, but nothing ever really seemed to advance and like service the overall story. And then you get to the end and it's like, okay, now we have to check the boxes of like these characters, like their individual stories that we set up earlier. We have to check those boxes real quick, and we might as well tie in the assassin and Templar stuff with that, and then we're done. We did a story, and it's good, and it's over, and we can ship it. So,
yeah, even the relationships with the people that are your allies or that are hanging out at your home base, don't really have any type of connection with them. Can't stand the kid. I don't know how you feel about the kid.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've definitely seen worse kids in media, but he was like, he was whatever. And again, they set him up to kind of have like this tragic backstory and all this stuff. And they like, we haven't talked about the camp, but like the camp where all your people are, like you mentioned Red Dead, which, is like the highest bar, but like this was the opposite of that. Like I would go there to upgrade my weapons. I would upgrade buildings to get the perks, like
add the buildings and
to get like, an additional scout.
Add a dog.
Or, I did add a couple dogs.
Add a new dog.
I had a little dog corner. But I definitely didn't feel like I was getting anything character development or like, because they would have the little exclamation marks over their head if they had like something to say, and I'd go and talk to them, and I'm like, who are you again? And then they'd share their like little thing they were talking about, be like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And so I can see certain people getting really into like designing their bases, but I feel like those people would rather play like Animal Crossing or something. This isn't their type of game anyway.
No, exactly.
So
and I have a kind of a blend in that, so I'm like a good person to talk to about this, because I'll spend hours in Jurassic World Evolution, right, and build, and I have no desire. I messed around with a little bit of it, like, oh, look, a new path, and I'm like, no, I don't. I have no interest in doing this. So yeah, just like you, I'll add the new building. Whenever I know I have enough to add the new building, get some upgrades, I'll do that, and then we'll move it along. Like I said, add a couple dogs, a little cat or something, but that's about it. So it was a mode an addition that I was pretty like excited to kind of explore, but it's relatively bare bones and it doesn't really like, there's not a whole lot of value there. So
yeah, I am glad that they fixed the frame rate with like the latest big patch that they did, because that initially playing the game, it felt like a separate game when you were at the base. It was like, what is happening? It's running at like 24 frames a second or something.
Yeah. It was rough.
Yeah, and then when I booted it up to finish it up over the last couple play sessions, it was like, oh yeah, this is a lot nicer. It feels like the same game now, which is cool.
Yeah, we didn't enter some strange Gotham Knights bubble.
Yeah, exactly. And back to the characters, I do think it was interesting that like Naoi feels like the Assassin's Creed character. Like she has, like she's the fastest assassin we've seen so far, which is cool. Like it was noticeable how fast she could run. She's the one with like the hidden blade, can do the assassinations, all that kind of stuff. Like she is the typical kind of main character archetype for these games. And then Yasuke, it's like he's there if you want to fight stuff easier, because he can't really do stealth very well. He can't do parkour very well, and he can't he doesn't have like the eagle vision thing we talked about earlier. So it was like, in a lot of ways, other than the fact,
what do you do?
Yeah, other than the fact that he could hit really hard and like you could actually hold your own in combat, it was like he was the lesser character across pretty much every other ability or every other kind of gameplay system that you would encounter. It was like if you wanted to get some like vantage points or whatever they call them, the towers, where he goes around the
whatever. Yeah, what do they call them now?
Viewpoints, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So
Yeah,
if you're on, like, a lot of times in these games, I'll just for an hour or two just like go and get viewpoints and like unlock. Which the way the map works in this one's a little different, but like you don't want to do that as Yasuke because he's just going to be like, "Hey, you need Naoi for this," and so in a lot of
Now
ways,
we can get up there.
yeah, it was like, what, what
We
are
know,
you,
man.
what are you doing here? What are you
We know. There's
contributing?
not like stairs.
Yeah, they didn't put a ladder on the inside,
Yeah,
which some of them they do. It's like there's a ladder that leads to like a
yeah.
hatch on the roof, but they're not all like that. So yeah, it's just
Nope.
it was an interesting choice to do the dual protagonists, and I don't know that it really paid off. I don't, like I said, I don't think it really hurt the game necessarily, but it definitely didn't feel like, oh wow, this game could not exist without these two protagonists, this system that we have here. So
Yeah, like if the next one doesn't have dual protagonists, I will not be upset. Like
no.
if they just commit to one. Now whatever Hex or Hexe is going to be, we don't know. But
Yeah, I was gonna say
as far as like maybe like a mainline Assassin's Creed
Right.
game, if it's just one protagonist, then that's totally fine.
Yeah, I have been hearing people say Hexe, so
Okay,
Hexe.
review for wait for it episode about Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, we'll go back
I
and
think
forth on
I
it.
think it's Hexe, even though there's no accent. I think
Yeah,
it's Hexe, but I don't know.
and even though
We'll see.
Hex kind of makes sense for the like setting, the like witch
Yeah.
trials and stuff, but
Right.
that one is a single protagonist. But like you said, it's not like it's more of a smaller experience. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see like what they do when because they're not gonna stop making these RPGs. They sell well,
Mm-mm.
so.
No.
Let's see. Outside of the main storyline, how did you feel about the other activities around the world? So, like, have you been doing many of the side quests, or, I mean, I guess there's a lot of them are more not combat focused, kind of, like you can go and you can pray at these temples, and then there's things like that, and then there's the classic Ubisoft missions of like, oh man, this particular brand of enemy sure has been harassing the people. Kill 100 of them for me. And it's like, all right, cool.
Yeah, sure.
I can do that, I guess. I probably will anyways, so I might as well get credit for it.
Yeah, I had to force myself to do them because I had to grind my level up. So, and then also get those knowledge points because I was like, I need this upgrade so bad. So let me go pray at some shrines. Let me go hit circle, triangle, left and right a couple of times and go do those. Some of those are like a little bit too long when it comes to like those knowledge point things, but it's in the grand scheme of things, they're not too bad. But yeah, some of those, like you talked about kind of already, like some of those side missions are like really are pretty interesting. And in getting to really in the last like 6 hours, I've been focusing a lot on them, like I said, because I was trying to get my level up, so I wasn't really focusing on the main story. So while they are interesting, I wouldn't be able to like point out one that I would actively seek out to want to go do, so that's probably a detriment that none of them are really. They're really more so of a just a cog to get to that next level that you need to get for one of the mainline missions. But yeah, they're fine. None of them have really irritated me other than anything to do with that kid. So other than that, it's fine. What do you mean he ran into the forest?
Yeah.
Why is no one watching this child? Why am I in charge of this?
Yeah.
I'm doing assassin stuff.
I think it falls into the similar trap that most RPGs do, where it's like, so on the map, like if you haven't seen it, there's like these circles, and each of those circles has like targets, kind of like their faces or masks or whatever, or it has like characters that you're working with and for. And so like the main circle, that's like your main quest, and then there's like offshoots, and there's the one with like the kid on it and some of your other allies that you can go do their side quests. There's ones that Yasuke gets where he has to go like do a bunch of duels. And so like I think some of the side quests, it's like the further out from the middle you get, the lesser the quality. So there's like there's the
it
ones
kept expanding. I was like, how many
are there? Yeah.
What all do I have to do here?
And yeah, so it's like the ones I think that you do with a named character or for a named character or in service of the main story. Like, I think a lot of those were pretty good or pretty solid. And then there were the ones that are like, find me this item that exists in the castles, but only Yasuke can get it. And so it's like, oh, I've been doing this entire castle as Naoi because I like the stealth element of it. I get to the chest.
Now I gotta leave.
Yeah, where Yasuke needs to like push this thing out of the way to open it. Oh, Yasuke would probably be strong enough to push that. And I'm like, well, it won't let me switch while I'm in like a restricted zone. So I'd have to like leave and come back. So some of those like smaller fetch quest ones felt like very just Ubisoft fetch quest nonsense. And then they had the ones that were like kind of repeatable, like the bounties that you could basically, they were just there to farm materials if you wanted to for your camp, which I did a few of those early on and was like, whatever. So yeah, I think the side content, the quests and stuff vary wildly, but I don't think that's a Assassin's Creed Shadows problem necessarily. Like all RPGs are like that.
Filling out the time.
Yeah, there's always the little quests.
There was that one we talked about. I don't know if it was like on the episode you did over on our show or if we were just talking about it in general, where the remaining members of that family showed up kind of like organically. That was like very like Shadow of Mordor-esque. Like, and like that was a really standout moment. But I think that's the only time that happens, right? I don't think it happens any other time.
Well,
so,
and I kind of saw that as like unintentional because
I think they were probably all there anyway. So
like I think you're supposed to do more in like investigating and stuff to kind of get to that point, because for me I walked in to this restricted zone and thought, oh, maybe this is the guy I need to kill. Turns out it wasn't necessarily the guy I needed to kill, but it was part of the ring. And
a different guy.
Yeah, and then the rest of the ring like kind of walks in right after I kill him, and it's just like bam, target, bam, target, bam, target. And so I ended up killing them all, like kind of cheesing it with Naoi, and then I zoom out, I go back to my map, and it's like, you managed to kill all these people and you spared this one. And I'm like reading.
Yeah, I spared somebody and I didn't know that I had done that.
Yeah, I'm reading the little blurb that's like Yasuke and Naoi, they talked to this person and based on yada, 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 decided like sparing them was the best option. And I'm like, that never happened. I didn't do that. So,
we didn't talk at all about that decision.
Yeah, it was like almost like I kind of did like a speed run skip or something on that whole assassination tree.
I don't think it was. So now that you put it that way, it probably wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I thought that
I was trying to get flowers, but it was totally unintentional.
Well, what's interesting is I thought that experience might be unique to me in the way that like I had kind of taken steps out of order a little bit, but apparently you managed to like stumble into the exact same scenario. So it's like, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot to do. Like there is in a lot of these Assassin's Creed games. So like if you really enjoy the gameplay loop and if you enjoy the stealth and the checklisty nature and clearing a map and all that, like there's a ton here. Like as far as content, it's well worth the cost. As far as quality 100%. Of content, that's where you can kind of get into debates because a lot of it is kind of the same. You can't really speak to this too much, not having played the previous RPGs. I touched on a little bit that this is the first one that was on PS5 and Xbox Series exclusively. I think that this game does feel like a step up. So like it feels like kind of that next gen step, not Black Flag to Unity next gen and not Syndicate to Origins. It's not like a huge leap. It still felt like that Assassin's Creed RPG game that I had played before, but it just felt like a more impressive version of that I hadn't, like the weather system, the seasons, the horse like actually looked and felt good, which the previous games, they've been hit and miss. And so like you said, the city's feeling lived in, which they're pretty good about that kind of stuff, but just everything, like the package of this game and the places where they did make those incremental improvements did make it feel like a step up compared to the previous games in the franchise. So it's not like that generational leap that we've seen in the past. It still sticks pretty close to the formula, but it does feel like a step up, and I can see why it wouldn't, like why they would want it to be exclusive to the next gen. I don't know why we say next gen, the current generation of
Current gen.
consoles.
Yeah.
Stop
Which
releasing
is dead,
stuff
by
on
the way. I don't know
PS4.
if you guys heard a previous episode of
Yeah,
Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. This generation's dead.
it's over. It's done with. So I did want to touch on that like it kind of lives in that like half step of, it's like a PS4 Pro or something, where it feels like it definitely a step up, but it's still that like RPG game that, you know, if you play the rest, you're going to feel pretty right at home here. So,
I will say, like, as someone who has not played one since Black Flag, so if you were like me and you also skipped quite a few of them, then it's definitely very apparent, like, where those improvements have come over the years. Like, is RPG the route I would have gone for this series long term? Probably not, but I'm glad this is the one that I have jumped back into, just because it seems like they have, from what I've heard, they've really kind of honed in everything they've learned from the previous three and then kind of put it into this. At least it's not Mirage. I think that's what I was worried about.
No, it's definitely not Mirage.
So
This would be the one out of the RPGs that I would like recommend to people. Out like this and Origins, I would struggle to be like, if I only wanted to recommend one, Origins has the best story out of all of them. The Egyptian setting also super dope, and it was open world, like massive open world RPG light. It was a lot less. I think we talked about it on your episode. It was a lot less into the like skill trees and systems and like weapons giving you a bunch of perks and stuff that you wanted to juggle. But it was like you can change your weapons out, and you can like it had some of those RPG elements, but it hadn't gone like Odyssey was the one that was like, let's try to be the Witcher. And so that one's still probably my favorite of the RPGs, but I think that Shadows it does a lot right, especially as far as like the gameplay stuff. I really enjoy, like I said, the first 10-15 hours of this game. The first 10 hours, like I hadn't even gotten both characters because I was just having fun doing stuff with Naoi. And then probably the first like 20 something hours, I was like just infiltrating castles and going through and doing like little side missions and stuff, and just like really taking my time with the stealth and just having fun with the game. And it wasn't until kind of the back half where the momentum started to kind of die for me as far as the like story, where I was like, okay, I'm ready to kind of just push through and like check this off. Like it's still installed on my Xbox. I can definitely see myself going back and like chipping away at some of these other assassination, quests and stuff. And then when the free DLC that we all get comes out, I'll probably check that out as well. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you've kind of lapsed and you're curious, like which one to jump into.
100%.
I think it's definitely a solid video game, and it's Assassin's Creed wise, it's done a lot to make what's good about that as far as like the stealth and stuff the best that it's probably been in a long, like probably the best it's been arguably ever, just because it's the like cleanest, most polished like iteration.
Just the nature of when it came out.
Yeah, exactly. But like there are purists for the old games, and I don't know that they would definitely find things to nitpick about it, but
sorry, you can't sit on a bench and
yeah, exactly. You can't hire
blend in with a group of people.
Four identical like women of the night to stand around you and make you invisible.
Or throw money.
That was great. I like doing that. It was pretty fun. You know what? Scratch that. These games suck. No.
Actually, just kidding.
Go play.
Have you gone back and replayed any of the Assassin's Creed games? Like, have you beaten any of them more than once?
I don't know about beaten. I've replayed 2. I've replayed Brotherhood. I've replayed. Okay. I went back and played, I don't know, 10 or so hours of Origins a year or so ago. Not Origins, Unity.
I will revisit Black Flag, maybe not this year, but like next year when that re-releases.
I played the opening hours of Black Flag this year for a YouTube video I did.
Right.
If they do the remaster thing, remake thing, I'll play that. I booted up Odyssey and played kind of the beginnings of that after Mirage to kind of cleanse my palate. And then I've been itching to go back to Origins, like last year, late last year, early this year, but I forced myself
Yeah.
not to do it because I knew Shadows was coming. And I knew if I played Origins leading up into Shadows, I'd be burnt out on like the gameplay just because
Sure.
they're
Yeah.
such big games and they'd be similar enough. Like Shadows, like I said, has done different things and like evolved systems, but it's like if
Mhm.
I played 40, 50 hours in Origins and then went right into Shadows, I'd be like, whew, this is I've
Yeah.
overeaten here. So like I've been
Yeah.
feeling the itch to go back to Origins, and that might happen, later this year or something. We'll see how the other games
Yeah.
shake out. But I have
Because I haven't.
revisited. I haven't beaten.
Okay.
I don't think any of them.
Yeah, because that's something I don't see a lot, even for the people that are big Assassin's Creed fans. Like if I'm on a YouTube um, deep dive and I'm just scrolling through stuff, I never really see a lot of. I revisited Origins, or I went back into Valhalla, and that's probably just the nature of how heavy they are in terms of how much there is to do and how long they
Mm-hmm.
take. Like, what was Valhalla? Did you say it was like 40 to 60 hours? Isn't
Valhalla
that what you
took me
said?
like 70 or 80 to beat.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Okay. See, yes. So yeah, I think just with the nature of how many, like how the large choice of games people have to play now, like I think that's probably why we're not seeing those. Like I revisited this, and here's how it went X amount of time later. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure those people do exist, but yeah, especially the later games that are so massive, it's like, yeah. And like I've replayed The Witcher multiple times, but like that game, it's just generational and special.
hmm
Whereas
like
like,
the Red Deads are separate from that, or
yeah,
like some people will go back into The Last of Us, which is crazy. But I've replayed like Horizon Zero Dawn. Because even though there's a heavy story there, it's very bright, it's vibrant. It's
oh yeah,
it's an open world too, but also it's relatively easy to get through. So
cool. Well, as we kind of like start to close this thing out a little bit, like going into this game, we talked about at the beginning of the episode what kind of like what we are looking forward to, expectations, all that. Like, would you say that this game has met your expectations, at least what you've played so far? Are you having a good time? Would you recommend it? Like, kind of where are you at from that perspective?
I would say so. Just like you, so first 10 hours, all right, we're good. It's going well. And then we get into so we unlock Yasuke. Okay, cool. I feel I un I was very wrong in thinking, all right, I can just cheese the rest of this game now and do whatever I want.
Right.
That was wrong. So then there was another, I would say 6 to 8 hours, maybe 6 to 10, where I was playing the game incorrectly, where it got very frustrating and really not liking the scouting system. And then having to, once I was also using them in the wrong areas at times. So I'm like, great, now I have to wait for the seasons to change to get more scouts or pay for it. So there was a time frame there where it was like a little touch and go. I was like, all right, I'm starting to get a little worried. And then over the last 6 hours, I would say I'm finally now hitting that stride. So if you have played this game, or if you've played all the RPGs, you're gonna be able to jump right into this, it seems like, and it's like riding a bike. But for someone who had to relearn how to play an Assassin's Creed game, there can be growing pains if you do not approach the game correctly, which I was not doing. And I was fully prepared to come on here and be like, I think I don't like this. But luckily that has changed. So I think I would say it has met my expectations as someone who has not played one in over a decade, likely, and it has me. If I think if they can build upon this and hone some things, because like you said, these aren't going anywhere. It doesn't. Nothing has happened here to make me be like, man, I don't even want to play Hex or Hexe or whatever, like
Right.
whatever it is. So all of that to say is, I think it did meet my expectations in terms of gameplay and jumping back into the Assassin's Creed series, but maybe fell a little short in terms of the protagonist, which I think we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah, and I think I would be right there with you as far as if you haven't played any of these RPGs, maybe check out like a beginner's guide or something to get your feet
Watch one
under
of
you.
those 10 things I wish I knew about Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Exactly.
Here's what the game doesn't tell you.
And then I think as far as my expectations, I think this met and maybe exceeded them as far as gameplay. Like, I think this does exactly what I've come to expect from the RPG version of Assassin's Creed, and does it pretty much the best, with the exception of like switching between protagonists to kind of do certain tasks. But like we've touched on or talked about already, like the stealth, all that kind of stuff, it works really well. It like the things they've updated. Like I think it makes this, like, we didn't even really talk about it, but if you hide in the shadows, you're harder to see. You can put out lights, like
Yeah.
they added all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff to stealth, and it definitely added some depth and some kind of much needed growth to that gameplay element. As far as the story and the characters and all of that side of this experience, that definitely, I guess I could say it met my expectations, because my expectations have been like set by previous games in the franchise, but I was definitely hoping for more. And the early hours of this game were signaling to me that even if the story was going to be somewhat predictable, like we would have memorable characters and moments and cinematography and like just cool things about it. And beyond the opening, it just really didn't live up to that promise. And so for me, that part of the game did not meet my expectations, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think you can also, I mean, we're in a pretty crazy age for protagonists right now too. So if you don't do something truly memorable or special, then they kind of just fall in with other characters. So the way that I would look at it is, sometimes I would approach it as if I were at a convention and I saw Assassin's Creed Shadow art, a collectible, a Funko Pop or something like that, would I want to add it to my collection? Probably not. So even though it's like really beautiful, it's like a beautiful setting, I would be more inclined to, like, I have Ghost of Tsushima Funko Pops. I have the Ghost of Tsushima art book. I don't really want the art book for Assassin's Creed Shadows, even though it's a beautiful game and the setting is great, and the some of the characters in terms of design are pretty cool. But yeah, that's how I kind of approach it now. Is like, would something from this game catch my eye if I was like at a convention or something like that? And probably not. So
Yeah, no, I get that. I think like a few years removed from this game, other than the fact that like Yasuke had all this controversy around him, like I think if you were to just look back, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that was the chick from Shadows. Like, what was
from
her like?" You
Shadows,
wouldn't. It would be kind of like,
Yahweh.
yeah, it'd be kind of like you do with basically every other Assassin's Creed game except for Ezio. It's like
Sure.
you look back and you're like, "I really love Black Flag. What was that guy's name?"
The pirate,
Yeah, what was his? He was,
Kenway.
yeah. I mean, it was Kenway.
Yeah.
It was something Kenway, Edward. But
Was
like,
he Edward?
yeah, he was Edward,
Okay.
and his dad was Hatham.
Hatham. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, I remember a lot of the names, but I'm like, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
verging towards like super fan of this franchise compared to like the average player base, and so yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of this stuff is unfortunately going to be pretty forgettable outside of the like technical innovations that Shadows showed, like as far as story and
Hmm.
stuff. Like you said, Ghost of Tsushima, Jin Sakai, he wasn't necessarily the most exciting protagonist, but he had a bunch of really
Yeah.
cool characters around him that kind of like lifted
Hmm.
him up with them. And then the ending of that game and like his relationship to his uncle was like extremely unforgettable for me. That's like
Yeah.
that was very impactful and very memorable.
Yeah. Also, if you want to break it down just from a visual aspect, the masks are cool. So like that stands out too. So like all of the different armor sets and armor pieces. Yasuke does have cool. I still have reverted back to his. I customize it to have his base like armor set because it just his samurai outfit because it just looks cool. But other than that, like from what I've seen so far, there's nothing that has stood out as opposed to look at all these cool different masks and oh look, I found the Sly Cooper thing, the Sly Cooper attachment in Ghost of Tsushima. So
Yeah.
those are things that I know people really love the Assassin's Creed Syndicate sister. I know people love that character. But other than that, yeah, where do they rank amongst the RPG characters for you?
We'll see. The Assassin's Creed Syndicate sister, she was like the only mainline female protagonist,
Yeah.
like that. And now that everybody loves Cassandra too, which is kind of like probably for the same reason, because like
Oh, okay.
they won't commit to like an actual female protagonist. But
She Valhalla,
she was
Cassandra.
Odyssey.
Origins.
She was the
Origins,
Greek.
Odyssey?
She was the
Okay.
Greek one.
Origins, Odyssey.
Yeah.
I went through all three of them.
As far as these
Mirage?
characters, where they rank for me in the RPGs, I feel like this game for me, like overall, is like second to Origins, and that's kind of across the board. Like I think Origins has the best characters. I think Odyssey's characters are fine, but similar to this, like they just kind of suffer from their game and the structure of it. They had an interesting thing where like they were brother and sister, and whichever one you pick to play as, which most people picked Cassandra, the other one would be like an antagonist in the game, which really feels I rebooted the game like when I went back and revisited it, and I played as Alexios, that's the guy's name. It was really bizarre for Cassandra to be the like antagonistic character. Like it didn't feel right or make sense. So, and then I thought that Valhalla did something interesting with their characters, but they didn't commit to it. Like if they would have forced you to play as female Eivor, it would have made the game so much better when you're like doing the mystical magical stuff in like Asgard. When you do that, you're playing technically as like Odin. And so if they had made the male be Odin and the female be Eivor, like that just would have made more sense. But they let you pick because they couldn't, again, commit to a female protagonist. And so then it was just like male Eivor and male what, depending on how you played. So like, I think they had a cool idea potentially there, but then they just didn't commit to it. So yeah, for me, Shadows kind of slots in at second place for the RPGs, pretty much across the board, I think. Right below Origins.
I think there's still something to be said though, even though playing as Naoi is the Assassin's Creed way. There is still something about playing as a tank character that just destroys people. So like the other example that I have is like when you switch to Venom in Spider-Man 2. Like there's just something very, very satisfying about that. And then once you get like that finishing move with the gun, it's like, man, you really do feel powerful. And then you do turn into that unstoppable character when you are running into, those enemies that are lower level and just like slicing through them. So that is still very satisfying, whether it be in this game or I think just kind of that trope in general. I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, for sure. No, I had a lot of fun playing as Yasuke. Did he feel like Assassin's Creed? No, not really. But but yeah, it was definitely fun.
He literally, I accidentally like ran through stone, like like the things on the side that are supposed to like stop you from going over. I like ran right through them. I was like, okay, that's a little much. The doors I can get behind, but the cement is crazy.
It's just like literally Superman.
Dude, it's nuts. And then and then he can't. And then when you fast travel, you have to like slowly climb down from the tower.
Yeah, I mean you can jump into the hay, but then he like kind of bounces out, and he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
I'm glad now he didn't see me do that." Yeah,
we get it, man. Just jump. Just make a stronger grappling hook. I don't know. Give him something.
So, do you have any kind of like final thoughts that you want to put a bow on before we? I think when we touched on it on your episode as well, but we'll kind of end this thing with like maybe looking towards the future a little bit. But before we get to that as our like final talking point, anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. Like I already said, for anybody who has not played this in a while, just completely adjust your playstyle if you haven't played any of the Assassin's Creed RPGs. Yeah, certainly play on that master stealth mode unless you really just want to like run through it. But I guess the only thing I would say is I think the core Assassin's Creed fan base, like yourself, they've already purchased this game. They've committed to it. But for the people that are either hesitant, or if you are still unsure about whether or not to jump back into a Ubisoft game, but also an Assassin's Creed game in general, I think this is a good point to jump back in and really gauge if you want to play some of the other ones. Because like Origins is always, we talked about this on my episode, Origins is always the one that I want to go back to and just give it a shot. So I think this is a good jumping off point to decipher whether or not you think this is going to be for you, or it sounds like Origins could be that jumping off point. So one of those two, it seems like, would be a really, really good opportunity to do so. If you are still on the fence, I would definitely wait till it goes on sale, because that will happen pretty soon. But there is a lot of bang for your buck here, even I think if you purchase it at full price. So I would just say that in terms of expectations, I think those were met for the most part. Just maybe lower them a little bit in terms of what you think you're going to get story wise. I'm trying to remember really like the last Ubisoft game I played that really gripped me from a story perspective, because it wasn't, I thought it could be Watch Dogs Legions.
Oh, yeah.
And that thing couldn't that thing didn't commit to a protagonist at all, and that's what its downfall was. It was probably Watch Dogs 2, because like the Far Cry games aren't very good. Far Cry 4 is good in terms of the villain.
Yeah, same with 3, but I mean that we're talking about Xbox 360 at that
now
point.
We're going back even farther. Yeah, Far Cry 5 with Giancarlo Esposito. Like, me and Jordan didn't even beat that game. She's pretty upset about it, but we like, nothing about that is memorable. So yeah,
you should play Origins. I think that's probably the answer for me.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
As far as story, I think that one hits the most. I think before that it was maybe Unity. Unity had a really solid story, but yeah, Division 2.
I think also what I would say, Division 2. God, I put a lot of time into the first Division.
Oh, the game's
did
great.
not vibe
I have no idea
with
about
the Division
story.
2. Yeah, I guess I would also say like this would be a tough recommendation if you haven't played one of the other games that have come out this year. So if you haven't started Clear Obscure, if you haven't played, no, I haven't beaten South of Midnight. I know you said like it kind of falters there a little bit towards the end, but like very much enjoying South of Midnight. And really what it is about those two is, it's, even though Shadows is a different experience, it's still familiar at the same time. Whereas Clear Obscure and South of Midnight maybe stylistically, gameplay wise, could be something that you're not currently playing, or have not ever played, or haven't played in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be really difficult for me to suggest this. I couldn't suggest it over Clear Obscure if you have not started that. And I think you could probably make a toss up for South of Midnight, but also you can beat South of Midnight in like what, 10 hours, 12 hours, something like that.
It's like a 10-hour game.
So yeah. So it would be difficult for me to recommend this over some of those others. So again, also lending to maybe wait till it's on sale.
Yeah. I think wait till it's on sale, and also just like for me, like I get that itch to play like a Ubisoft style game where I know that I'm going to be checking boxes, working my way down a quest log, like, and I like that. And I'm, I get in the mood for that. And it's just like every once in a while I get in the mood for like a JRPG, and then I play one and I'm like, I'm good. I scratched that itch.
That's enough of that.
Yeah, it's like I usually have like one JRPG in me a year kind of thing. Last year was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This year would probably be Clear Obscure, which isn't a JRPG, but it plays a lot like one. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, no, I agree. I think this is definitely a game worth checking out. It's also one you could probably wait till it's on sale, Black Friday, whatever, or you're like in a gaming lull and pick it up and see if you like it.
The summer Steam sale is like in a month and a half. So
yeah, I'm sure.
They also run Ubisoft sales all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can get Origins on there for like $5 consistently. So definitely check that out. Mm-hmm. Forget this game. Just buy Origins.
just do that instead.
Cool. Well, the future of the franchise, we dove into this a lot more on your show, so definitely want to send people over there to check that episode out. It was a lot of fun, and you just have to put up with Eric.
And being like, I don't know.
Just being like,
I have nothing to add here.
Why did we do an episode on this franchise? But yeah, what would you? We've kind of touched on Hexe a little bit, and like that is looking to be a little bit like they're claiming, or it's been rumored it's going to be more of like a linear, story-driven, focused kind of experience set in a really interesting time period, dealing with like the witch trials and stuff. So that sounds super dope on paper. I hope that they nail it. I would love to see. I mean, people complain about this franchise going to RPGs, but I think they would complain less if we got quality experiences in other kind of, which they tried to do with Mirage, but because that game was essentially just DLC before they made it a little bigger and sold it as its own game. Like if they're intentionally making, the more linear, dark kind of maybe horror themed thing in Hexe, and then maybe they decide to do, they're doing Black Flag Remake, which doesn't really count, but I mean, that could be another skew. They go down kind of like remaking some of the classics, and then, maybe make like a more focused, still could potentially be like open world, but like basically what Mirage tried to do, but just do it better. Like a single city, real tight, like real kind of like smaller scope, and like giving the old school fans something that they can really get into. Like I think there'd be less whining about the RPGs if they could pull off doing these other things within the franchise, but do them well. Like have them be good, meaningful, worthwhile experiences.
Would like them to try something like they did with Unity again. I would really enjoy trying a cooperative Assassin's Creed game. Will they do that just because of the stench that's associated with it, which is unfortunate? But yeah, if Hexe is like this cool horror style game, because I really enjoy when they go into. That's why it's so funny when people complain about realism in Assassin's Creed. Like there is a giant squid underneath. What was it, like Rome or something like that? Whichever city it was.
Yeah.
In Assassin's Creed 2 or something like that.
Well, I just talked about how you go to Asgard and Valhalla, and
yeah. So
people are like,
what are you talking
historical
about?
realism. Yeah, that argument is so stupid.
Yeah, and to its credit, like I can't remember which Assassin's Creed it was, but like, don't they use it as a kind of interactive thing in like some museum? Some museum uses.
Origins was the
I think
first
it
one
might
to
be.
do that.
Yeah, I was gonna
where
say. I think it's Origins.
They called it like a guided tour mode or something, where essentially you could just look at
super cool
the landmarks and stuff that they had built that are historically accurate to a point. And they would like give you historical information and stuff like that. They did that in Mirage too with Baghdad, like giving you additional, like that part of what they did in that game was pretty cool as far as like contextualizing the historical stuff. So yeah, they do a lot of cool stuff with that as far as history goes, but their narratives are never historically accurate. It's historical fiction, always has been.
Yeah. So I would like to see them try and revisit that, where they go from here now that they have done Japan, because that's the setting that people have been clamoring for probably since 3. And now that they have done it, I'm very interested to see what they would do next. But yeah, in terms of Hexe, and then also the remake, the Black Flag remake, like they have an opportunity here to kind of go like 3 for 3 in a very short amount of time. And I think that's a really good thing, because especially not knowing what the status is of whatever they're doing with Watch Dogs and Far Cry. Like I don't think they're ever going to reinvent that formula, because the people are just set in their ways with that game. So I think it's a positive sign for sure. So yeah, we'll see. Is Hexe supposed to come out next year? We don't know really.
I don't know that we know
anything about that.
I think that's the like rumor is that we might get Black Flag at like this year, which I would be surprised if that happens as well if it comes out late this year, but it's possible. And then especially after
we got the
Oblivion. Yeah. And then I think Hexe is supposed to be like their game next year, but nothing has actually come out officially from Ubisoft. We'll see over the summer with like, Games Fest and stuff like that going on, if maybe we get some more details from Ubisoft. But
yeah, it's only May. That's nuts. It's like it's crazy. We go back and forth between, oh my god, it's already May, and it's only May at the same. Like both of those things are true.
Yeah.
At the same time, like we haven't even gotten to Doom, which I've never played a Doom game, and I'm excited for this one. And then, yeah, who knows what else is going to come out? The Switch 2 still isn't even here, so.
I have a game pre-installed called Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, which is like another kind of action Souls game that looks pretty sick. So, yeah, Game Pass been hitting pretty hard this year. So,
They're on a roll.
Finally.
They're on a roll,
They
man.
finally did it.
Yeah, I know. Those 2 years were like a little rough. So I don't even know what I have in my wish list. But yeah, there's a good amount of stuff that we still haven't even like. Oh, Mafia! The Mafia trailer came out
Oh
today.
yeah, that looks pretty
I
cool.
was like, God, that looks cool.
Yeah,
I like the Mafia games. Mafia 3 was disappointing. I went like all in on Mafia 3. I thought it was going to be like excellent, and it was fine.
I loved the like story and characters for Mafia 3. The gameplay again very repetitive and
Yeah,
like
that's what it was.
suffered from being open world. Probably didn't need to be open world, but it came out at that time, which, you know.
Hey, feeding people to alligators doesn't get boring.
But yeah, it was. I thought that I think the Mafia games have always nailed story, so I'm very excited
100%.
for the next one. But as far as Shadows, I think that's a good place to leave it on this episode. Thanks again for coming on and chatting with me about it, Phil. It's been fun. We have had you on a few times already, so people definitely know where to find you. But you guys are always up to all sorts of crazy shenanigans over there. So why don't you tell everybody what the Wait For It podcast is up to right now? You guys have been streaming like madmen. You're
Eric, I think, is streaming right now.
Yeah, you're both doing like kind of personal projects and stuff too. Like Eric's really been working on like social media stuff on his own account. I know you've been doing like voice acting stuff. So like, what do you guys have going on?
Yeah, so if you want to hear more Assassin's Creed talk and kind of get Andrew's overall kind of history with the series as well, and a bit more of a deep dive, that episode will be out here at the end of the month on May. I'm a professional 21st, so that episode comes out soon. And yeah, still episodes every Wednesday. We stream a lot on Twitch now, usually twice a week, bare minimum once a week. So we've been playing a lot of fun games over there. We did just hit affiliate status, which is cool. So we're trying to think of like an idea to like celebrate that, which will be a lot of fun. And next month on June, I'm a professional, 14th and 15th is Bold Matsuri here in Jacksonville. So that's our next convention. If you're a big anime fan here in the Northeast Florida area, or really anywhere, travel in, and we have a really, really cool and awesome guest lineup this year. So we'll be back there. And then, yeah, like you said, I've been prepping for this voice acting journey. I've taken a couple of classes, starting to put my in-home studio together. So if you want to follow me individually, that's Phil the Filipino, Filipino, and then along with all the Wait For It stuff. So
nice.
Busy, man.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot going on. We'll
along with trying to fit in when we're gonna watch the second half of Black Adam.
I know.
with the rest of we got Super Braggart Bros returning soon. Like, we're gonna be busy, man. The universe is we're up to a lot.
It's impressive. It's impressive. Cool. Well, yeah, there will definitely be links to all that stuff, unless I forget some of it, in the episode description. So definitely go check out Wait For It. Check out Phil. Check out Eric. They always got a lot of cool stuff they're doing over there. As far as us, I'm not going to go too crazy into plugs here. It's a good size episode already, but definitely if you enjoy the show, let us know. We'd love to hear it. 5-star rating reviews on your podcast app of choice, and likes, comments, subscriptions on YouTube. That's a free, easy way for you to help us out. We would really appreciate it. With all that being said, thanks again, Phil. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you on the next episode.